right, Dale, kick us off.
All right, welcome to the DEtour podcast. This is brought to you by Team of Design Extensions. I'm here with Jay and Chris, and we're here, and basically the purpose of this podcast is to provide business owners and entrepreneurs insights into what is working right now in the world of marketing. Today, we're going to go over our trip to VidSummit, which was a conference out in LA last week to highlight what's going on in the video world. Primarily on YouTube, but it also branched out in a couple different areas, which is really cool. And we're going to kind of break into that and talk about our trip out there.
So for those of you that maybe are watching us on the video, and those of you listening on the podcast may get a little bit of a different experience, the focus for us really is on the audio, so we may not always directly be looking at the camera or engaging, so it's really more about having a conversation, and hopefully it's helpful, and you get some insight out of it. So we went to LA.
Yes. Yeah. And the plane ride was freezing. Oh my God.
It was like an Arctic plane ride.
It was just a quick trip.
I just told y'all to mute your computers, and then I didn't mute mine. That's how it goes.
Go figure.
So yeah, quickest trip out west
ever
that I think has ever been done.
By anybody?
Yes, and I think modern day transportation.
I would agree.
We flew out late Tuesday night, Eastern time, and then flew back late Thursday night, Pacific time. So it was quite the whirlwind of an adventure we had.
It was literally 48 hours. We were there for 48 hours because we landed, 11:30 or something their time, and then we left at 10:30 their
almost
time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was almost exactly 48 hours.
Yeah.
The trip started off great, going through security in Orlando. So unlike these two gentlemen with their 5 o'clock shadow and lumberjack beards, I like to keep a super smooth baby face, and so I brought my super trendy, razor, and of course they stopped me and made me take the blade out. What was weird is when they opened up my bag.
It really made you take that razor blade out.
Yeah, why would they do that?
Very strange.
It's been 16 years since 9/11. Like, why would they ever?
So, PSA: if you have a nice razor, don't bring the blades in it.
Good call.
You'll have to buy blades when you get there, or use a cheap razor once you get there. But they wouldn't let me touch my bag once they took it, like it was theirs. And then when they opened it, he took this, I don't know what it was, but he took almost like this little piece of paper, like he was testing what was in there, and then waved it all around inside the bag and waited for some sort of reaction with whatever he put on there. And I guess it was clear.
Let's make sure you didn't have any bomb stuff in there. I think everything.
It's just
I left that at home and just brought razor blades. Anyways, they took the only razor blade I had, and I left it there. Put on a piece of tape.
Another prize for the TSA.
TSA wins again.
I think my favorite part of that entire thing was when you walked past and you're like, why did you get stopped? And you're like, oh, they took my razor blade. And just the idea that you brought a razor blade with you was like the best part. I'm not going to lie. That was the best part of the entire time.
Like, this baby face doesn't stay this smooth.
This doesn't happen by accident. This doesn't happen by accident.
So just to redirect us a little bit, the point of the trip.
Yes.
The point of the trip. So we kind of kicked around the idea. We've been doing a lot more video lately. That's been a big change really in the last 12 months for us internally and for the client work that we're doing because of the engagement that we're seeing online. So the reason we went out there was to kind of continue our own education and make sure that we're staying ahead of the trends and kind of stay on the wave of what's happening in the marketing world because it's easy to get left behind. So the idea behind VidSummit for us was to go kind of catch up on a lot of stuff and just kind of get filled in. And one of our favorite speakers was there, Mr. Gary Vaynerchuck. So that was pretty cool to see him live.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was worth the trip alone, in my opinion. I think we've talked about this, but for those of you that don't know Gary Vaynerchuck, he's he's a serial entrepreneur. He owns one of the largest digital marketing agencies in the world. He works with some of the biggest brands in the world. He's a motivational speaker. He does a whole bunch of different things, and we follow him so much. I mean, we watch everything. It's crazy to me how many people don't know who he is. Because I would tell that to a couple people when we got back, and they're like, "Who's Gary Vaynerchuck?" I'm like, "How do you not know who this guy is?" But there are quite a few people. But his stage presence is absolutely amazing. amazing. Just his ability to engage a crowd and even in a crowd of, I don't know how many people were there. It wasn't that big. It was maybe 200, 300 people, maybe. Just to be able to make it seem like he was talking straight to you for half his talk, it was amazing.
Yeah, if you've never seen Gary Vaynerchuck before, definitely check him out online, Gary V. Just FYI, he's a good old New Jersey boy, so his language can be a little bit abrasive to some people. But he also is a super smart guy, and he kind of walks the walk. He definitely puts in the hustle, probably more than most of us would be willing to do, to be honest. But he puts out a lot of interesting content, interesting examples of how to do stuff that relates to really all businesses. Mm-hmm. And so there were a lot of speakers there. It wasn't just Gary V. But just backing up a little bit, get back to the trip itself. Before we actually went to the talk, first thing we did when we landed, it was 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. And I've never been to an In-N-Out burger before. I've been to California a couple times, but just somehow never made it out there. And everybody's like, you have to try In-N-Out burger. So first we got to our hotel, got checked in, grabbed an Uber, straight to the closest In-N-Out burger, which had like a line.
Walked.
Oh, no, that's right. You're right. We walked
like 20
minutes.
We
took somebody Uber to fuck with
We walked through the sketchiest part of LA. Every back alley.
And you didn't have your razor blade with you.
We had nothing.
I'm pretty sure everyone else around us had a razor blade. We were the only ones without one.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
So we get there, it's like 11 o'clock at night, line around the door, which is, like around the building.
Yeah, so the line in the drive-thru was backed up to the road,
Yep.
and we walk inside the door, and the line was from the counter to the door.
Yeah.
It was crazy at 10:30 at night.
And they're kind of an interesting example just from a company perspective, thinking about their own company growth, in that they really don't sell much. Like, it's hamburgers, French fries, and milkshakes. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not even anything fancy. It's like, you got your hamburger, bun, lettuce, and tomato. You can have one patty or two patties. You can have ketchup, mustard, and some of that special sauce, which I think is just $1,000 dressing.
Yeah, that's literally.
They do have one special thing that we heard about but didn't have the opportunity to order. It was
animal style.
Animal style.
Oh, yeah.
So if you know anything about animal style or can inform us on how that what that means, please let us know more about that.
And so then we ordered this In-N-Out burger, which I have been told, like, people are religious about this. I mean, it's like allegedly the best hamburger there is, or at least there's a large continuum of people who believe that. And then I proceeded to make this comment on Facebook that I wasn't really convinced that it was the best, and I got a lot of backlash from that.
I would agree, though. I mean,
it was good.
Yeah, I think that was the third time I've been to In-N-Out, and it definitely wasn't as good as I remember it. First time I went was in Vegas when I went there, but it was, compared to Five Guys, though, like you brought that up, Jay. Five Guys, in my opinion, is way better.
I like all the stuff on Five Guys.
Yeah.
Like, I like it with my mushrooms and bacon and all that stuff.
Yeah, I find it hard to go wrong with a fresh hamburger and fresh ingredients. I always am the worst at being a judge of which food is better than the other because I just like to eat. So Five Guys, Wendy's, In-N-Out burger. If it fills my tummy, if it fills me up, it does the job. So that's all I'm looking for in most instances.
Yes.
It was pretty good. So anybody out there, we can fight about it, but like for me, Five Guys is still the champion. I feel like I've had a lot of hamburgers in my life. There's one thing I feel like I know pretty well, it's hamburgers. Yeah. And I mean, it was good. Like, don't get me wrong, it was a fresh patty on a toasted bun. You can't really go wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it was as good as Five Guys. I'd be willing to try it again.
Yeah, I would always try it.
Yeah, I think we should test that.
We're going to need to fly back just to try it.
Check that
we actually were going to try and go before we left and never pulled that off. So one of the things for me whenever I travel is I always like to try and find local food places like that. I just love, I don't know, I love food in general, like Chris said, and I think we're kind of the same in that we travel a lot together, is finding spots that are kind of unique to the area. We did that a little bit. But getting back to the talk a little bit, we'll go back to food in a little bit. Other than Gary Vee, or maybe we should focus on Gary Vee a little bit actually, and what he talked about, and kind of the things that we got out of that. Because I think that was valuable for me. So for y'all, what were some of the big things that kind of stood out in his talk?
I think that, the question in regards to that you had specifically around websites and is that going away? Does that need to be the core part of, as a company, should that be the core part of your marketing strategy? And him saying that no, you still have to have a website because you own it. It's not a platform run by someone else. We heard Rachel Farnsworth, which we'll talk about in a little bit, talk about Facebook being a 16-year-old girl and how whatever they'll do whatever they want whenever they want. However, if they feel like it or not, they're just going to do what they want. And tying your business to something that you can't control is not very wise.
Yeah, we actually had a blog post about that not that long ago, where the question was, is it okay for Facebook to be on a website? Because a lot of companies out there, especially smaller companies, which I totally get, like trying to keep costs low initially and everything else, making Facebook be their marketing vehicle. And it can be a big part of it, but if it's the only part, the problem is it could just change overnight.
And we saw that there too, because there's a lot of people from YouTube that were there. And we heard horror stories of people that had tied their entire business model around YouTube. And when YouTube changed the algorithm, they just crashed. They went from hundreds of thousands of subs, as they would call it, subscribers, to literally they just lost all their ad money, everything overnight, because they no longer were getting the views that they needed. And that's just, to do that is just insane to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought another interesting point was he kind of referred to the people that were there as the 2%.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's interesting, both for people within the industry and those that are not. Because I think if you're within the industry, you often take for granted what you're surrounded by all the time and what you know. And you have so much to offer to everyone else. And if you're not within the industry, it already seems kind of like a lot to understand as far as websites and social media marketing and PPC and SEO and video work and all these things, and they only know a little bit about what really happens behind the scenes. And so I think that was interesting because we kind of challenge ourselves or compare ourselves to other people within the industry, and we feel like, oh, these people are doing so good and those people are doing so good. But it's interesting when you kind of take a step back and try and think from more of like your clientele persona and realize that, hey, not everyone knows this stuff. They don't know how to get it done, and how can we help them in these areas and help them be successful. And in this type of situation where this is growing so rapidly, I thought that was a pretty good takeaway from Gary as well.
Yeah, it was neat. He, I think, does a good job of kind of being where the market is and kind of knowing where the market's going. And I thought his perspective on talking about how important voice is now, how important podcasting has become, which is part of the reason why we're doing this now, is going, hey, let's kind of eat our own dog food, if you will, and walk the walk a little bit. And it was neat to be able to ask him a question and kind of get his perspective on where the future was going. His whole answer was basically voice, which is kind of interesting because it almost feels like it's going backwards. Because video, it's taken so long to get video to where it is. Because when I started doing websites, in the late 90s, which sounds like forever ago, you couldn't do video on the internet. It was just too slow. You could barely even put a picture on there. And now you can put a 4K video on there and do it for free by putting it on YouTube or a lot of other platforms. And now Gary's saying, let's go back to audio because we can multitask.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I thought the reasoning behind that was cool. The way, looking forward, most people spend about 50% of their waking time on their phone, and the most times they're using their phone, they're trying to do something else too. So video is working now, but at some point people need to be able to utilize their phone and ingest whatever information they're looking to ingest, but also be able to multitask and use other time wisely, because that's the hottest thing right now is time.
And it will be. I'm curious if things like self-driving cars or things like that, as things become more automated, how that changes that role. Because you're not going to be watching something while you're driving. You'll be listening to something. But I'm curious with the self-driving car if that will continue to keep things that are more visual at the forefront.
Yeah.
But that's
quite a ways away. I'm never going to let a car drive me. Our dang DJ Roomba gets stuck on the barber chair out there. I'm not going to let a car drive me. I thought there was 3 really cool things that happened during Gary's talk. One was the opportunity for Jay to ask a question. You know, like Cale said, this is someone that we watch a lot, and you know, we inspire and helps drive us daily. So having the opportunity, you know, face to face to ask a question to Gary to say, "Hey Jay, how are you doing?" Like that just was a really cool experience. Another cool one was the very first. I don't know if you guys remember the very first question. The guy was saying how he was just getting started, and asked about, you know, what it would take to work with his team. And on the spot, Gary was like, "Hey, email me, tell me who you were, and start in January." Gave him a date, and he said, "You can come work with my team for a week in January." And I thought that was really cool of him. And then the other one I thought was the young guy, CJ Bowling. You know, there were some younger guys there because it was a YouTube crowd.
How old was he? Like 12-ish?
Yeah,
Maybe
I think he was
younger than that?
12 or 9 or something like that.
Young.
He was young. Yeah, real young kid. So first off, you know, applaud the kid for not only going and doing something that he's dreaming of doing, but then to wait in line and then ask a question.
And then bless his little heart.
Yeah, it was a little big for him at the moment. But you know, the same thing. This is a pretty cool experience for him, and you know, and Gary asked him what his dreams were, and his first goal was to get 300 subscribers on his YouTube list. And Gary asked the audience right there, and I think it literally was minutes. Right?
It went from like 150 to almost 400, like almost instantaneously.
By the end of the next question, he had 300 subscribers.
Which was pretty
I was
cool.
like tracking it.
But the other thing I thought was really neat too for Gary in that was two things. One, he showed off the power of empathy and like really connecting with somebody on a human level. Because here's this guy who's, you know, multimillionaire, followed by millions of people online, very successful at what he does, and then here's this little kid, you know, and he's able to just stop everything, look him right in the eyes. And the most important thing I thought was really cool that he took the time to say was, he said, "Look, I can get you those followers. We get that right now." He said, "But what do you want to do?" And he's like, "Well, I just want to inspire people and help people." And he's like, "Well, you're already doing that, so just keep doing it." And he's like, "And don't be obsessed with your follower count or anything else." And Gary even made the point, which is true. Like if you look at some of the social platforms, like he's not the like most followed from like a subscription standpoint in some particular platform. He doesn't care. He's more interested in the market as a whole and finding ways to connect with people all over the place. And I thought it was pretty cool to kind of give that kid that age, really impressionable age, to kind of go, "Hey, don't need to worry about your subscribers. You're going to help people. You already are. So just keep doing that." And it was cool to see kids that young there hustling, trying to learn stuff, trying to get engaged. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
There was one other kid too. That one just had more impact because the kid started crying and Gary got all this. So maybe the role of that is start crying.
There was another kid. Yeah, there was another kid that did it. I'm trying to think. Who else was? I think like moving past the Gary Vee portion now. The rest of the day, I think my biggest takeaway from that was the Rachel Farnsworth talk.
She was good.
Facebook. So Rachel Farnsworth, for those of you that don't know her, she runs the Stay at Home Chef. It's the stayatHomeChef.com. You can also look her up on Facebook. She has over 2 million followers and likes, which is really important, the difference between those. Understanding that, but she has over 2 million of those on Facebook, and she told us that she makes just from ads, right? Just from ads from her website traffic, she makes $40,000 a month, which is impressive considering everything that she does. Now she is a Facebook pro when it comes to posting and creating engagement and creating likes. She gathers a bunch of data regarding posting, right times to post, cross promotions, things like that. And it was really cool to get an inside view into how she works on a daily basis and also works with other pages and influencers within Facebook. You can tell that she does a really good job. And I think the biggest takeaway that we had, obviously, was her approach to having the website and drawing traffic to it. And it's exactly how we believe in things, and that the website is the hub. The website is what makes her the money. She just uses Facebook to drive traffic to her website. She uses, which builds her SEO, which then builds her website, which she uses YouTube. She does 3 videos a week, really short. Like I was looking at her YouTube channel, very short, like 1 minute to 2 minute long little cooking videos that she shoots in her own kitchen. High quality, they're great, they're nothing crazy. And she drives them back to her site, and she uses Instagram and Pinterest and everything else to drive people back to her site. And it just goes back and forth, and it's a symbiotic relationship between all of us. And I think it's really important, especially at that level. It can get overwhelming for a lot of people, especially business owners, to think of all of those different things that you need to use. and being able to just kind of take a step back and look at the ones that, what are the key components that work best for your business right now that you can go and start implementing right now? Because we could talk about it, millions of different platforms, but what are the ones that you can go and use right now? But that was a really cool talk.
Well, I think one of the things about that is people always ask me, like, what does design extensions mean?
Yeah.
And to me, like that illustration that she had, where she kind of had the website in the middle, all these other things that kind of connect to it, like to me, that is what it means. It's like design is this big, design covers everything. Like design, everything is about design. It's how things look, but it's how things work as well. It's not just how they look, it's how they work too. It's function and form. And all those other things sit inside of that. And the website, to me, is kind of like that center of the hub of the wheel. And everything else is a spoke or an extension that comes off of it and keeps things going around. And the more spokes you have off of that wheel, to me, the more supported that wheel is. And I think what happens with a lot of people, and this is one thing Gary talked about too, was they get too obsessed with one platform and they put all their marbles into search engine optimization, or all their eggs into this basket over here, this one over here, pay-per-click or social or whatever else. And what Rachel showed in that illustration was having like a distributed model. You know, if Pinterest were to go away tomorrow, like it might affect her, but it's not the end of the world. If YouTube were to go away tomorrow, it's not going to kill her. Now, granted, most of her subscribers are on Facebook, so that probably would hurt her the most out of all those things. But it seems like she's developed a pretty well-rounded strategy across all those platforms. And I think that was a really big takeaway in general. And I also thought it was neat with her because you could see that she and her business is making cooking videos. Like it's a passion. So she's showing off food. Everybody likes food, but it's really all about business. Like everybody's selling something. It's just a matter of what. In her case, she is selling traffic to her website because somebody else is buying it out on her website. Somebody's coming to her website to read her blog posts or to watch her videos, and that's what she's selling. And she understands that. She understands the business side of it, and that's why she's successful. It's not because her cooking videos are good.
Yeah, she talked about
it could be anything else.
The shrimp effect. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was huge.
And she talked about another one of her, podcasting video colleagues, and saying that this person has done really well, extremely well, making shrimp only recipe videos.
Yeah.
And the person cannot stand shrimp. So basically, what she's done is said, you know what? Well, I want to create content that people are interested in. And she's found that people are interested in shrimp. And so regardless of if the person creating it or producing it or sponsoring it likes shrimp, is interested in shrimp or not, the content is getting the people and attracting people who are interested in shrimp.
Yeah, because we tell our clients that all the time, right? Like we're not building a website for them. Right. We're building a website for their prospects, for their clients. Like that's who matters.
I think, and that's huge because a lot of people forget about the eyeballs. You want to get in front of as many people as you can, the right amount of people and the right people that you can. I think a lot of people do forget about that, especially when it comes to a website. Because how many times do we talk with someone and they're like, I just need a website. I just need a website. It's like, well, that's great, but that's an overpriced business card right now in today's world. Because you need to get someone to see that site, and then you need them to convert, and you need a lead, which you then can use to grow your business.
And ultimately, it's about figuring out what that end goal is. I mean, that's what Gary was asking that kid. That's what she's asking herself. It's like, what's she trying to accomplish? Well, what she's trying to accomplish is getting people to her website. That's really where she makes her money. Well, she does that by getting people to like and follow her Facebook page and watch her YouTube videos and do everything else. But ultimately, it's a question of people trying to put the cart before the horse, and they say, I just need a website, or I just need SEO, or that's almost never true.
No.
They need a complete strategy is what they need. And it was just interesting because this conference was about video, but then it got shifted over to voice, and it got shifted to websites, and it got shifted to all these other things from a strategy perspective. But while the conference was about videos, it really was about like marketing as a whole. Right? It all goes back to communication, and video is just a great avenue to communicate.
Yeah.
Anything else on Rachel before we move on? Because there was that other live stream one I want to talk about too.
All right, she was good. She was good.
So I think it was the first talk that we sat in.
Very first.
There were like multiple talks happening at the same time during the day, so we tried to split up when we could. The first one, Chris and I sat in, and Kale was out in a different one, and we all kind of came back together for Gary V. I think everybody was in that one. Then it split back up into smaller talks. But the very first one was, I don't know if I can pronounce her name, I'm going to slaughter it. Loria? Is that right?
Loria
Petrucci? Anyway, sorry, we probably got that wrong. But she's from livestreamingpros.com, and she kind of got big, I mean, years ago, like 2005-ish, I want to say, which is really when video on the internet started to kind of take off. I want to say that might have been the birth year of YouTube, but if not, it was pretty close. And then she kind of crashed things a little bit and kind of restarted, and now she's doing some live video training. There's a lot of live video work in general. And I thought that was really interesting, even though we're not doing this particular podcast live since it's our first one. We may do some in the future once we get the hang of this thing. And work out the kinks. But she talked about kind of 4 different levels of professional live video to think through, which I thought was interesting. The first was kind of the selfie cam. That's one we're all used to, where somebody's got the camera in there, doing the selfie cam. The other was to kind of level up to like a little bit more mobile equipment, which is what we're using today, which is kind of level 2. You're using the Mevo camera if you've never seen that before, which is pretty cool. The next is to kind of get a more intricate studio setup, and the next is like a professional studio, which we're actually thinking about building out in our back office. I think we're definitely going to do that, actually. So I thought that was kind of interesting to think about those different levels. And then she talked about live videos versus live streams. Remember that?
Yeah. She talked about like identifying the two, and once you kind of identified what those two were, you recognize them right away, and you recognize that there's certain people who do either one of those very well, but her main point was for a successful campaign and to wrap it all the way back into marketing, either marketing yourselves or a business, you have to marry the two together with a purpose. And I thought that was an interesting point of, like the live streams were just like Instagram stories or Facebook videos or Snapchat.
That was live stream.
Live stream,
Yes.
yes. And so those are things that we see all the time on our phones. And then the live shows were something more like this, where it's a little more produced. You maybe have a little more content created.
A little more intentionality behind it. It's been planned, it's produced, versus like, hey, I'm at the concert and blah, 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 or hey, I'm at VidSummit and today we're talking about this. That's a live stream of something that's happening versus like a planned live show, where you're producing something on a regular basis. And that was a big deal too. You talked about, everybody I think had this theme of consistency. So we're going to start producing this show once a week. Is that what we're doing?
It might not be all 3 of us once a week.
Yeah,
all right.
maybe. We're going to try to do something once a week.
Okay, we're going to, plus we want to bring in other team members too. So it won't just be the 3 of us. And we're going to release it every Monday?
To be determined.
Okay, we'll shoot for Monday.
What's today? I don't even know what day it is. Tuesday.
Tuesday? Sure, Monday.
Every Monday we're releasing this show.
Perfect.
And
it's out there. Now we have to do it.
yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload the video to our Facebook page, and then the podcast we'll put on iTunes. And so it can be subscribed to and downloaded there. That kind of leads me to my next favorite talk for me. So I started doing my first podcast, a couple months ago now. I think there's episode 12 goes out this week.
You going to plug it or what?
buildingabusinessthatlasts.com.
Follow it on iTunes. Go to
Subscribe.
buildingabusinessthatlasts.com.
And so there was a guy who was talking about podcasts. I'm trying to think of his name now. Let me look it up real quick. He has been around for podcasting from like the very beginning.
Paul Colligan.
Super smart guy. He actually wrote a book called something like The Bible of Podcasting before Apple even had podcasting on iOS. So he's early days podcasting. A lot of really interesting information in his talk. Again, a lot of it goes back to consistency. But one of the big takeaways that I thought was most interesting that I actually didn't know, despite having already have a podcast going and other information, was how people get ranked on podcasts. And he said, YouTube's algorithm is super complicated. Google's algorithm is super complicated. Nobody really knows exactly how they work. iTunes, however, is not complicated at all. Everybody knows exactly how it works, and there's no mystery behind it whatsoever. So the way that you get ranked for a top podcast on iTunes is 100% based on the number of total subscriptions in the last 24 hours. That's it.
That's super interesting.
That's the total algorithm. So that's a little iTunes secret. And the other thing, which also was interesting, was, and I've noticed this myself, there's a section on iTunes called New and Noteworthy. And I read a bunch of stuff before launching my podcast on how to get listed in that New and Noteworthy section. which hasn't happened, by the way. So if you want to subscribe to the podcast, that'd be great. And he said that section is actually broken right now. And I've actually kind of noticed that because I've been checking it every week and it hasn't changed.
For how long?
Since the beginning. Like in 12 weeks, it hasn't changed. I saw a few that got shifted out, but for the most part, it's the same.
Wow.
And so I'm like, it's 12 weeks in, they're not new and noteworthy anymore.
Yeah.
No.
And so he said that there was a known issue in the iTunes store right now and in the podcast system we're doing it where he's not displaying properly. Like he's like, so basically, I ignore it. He said the only thing you should focus on is how to get the number of subscribers. And what he recommended was, because it's the number of subscribers in the last 24 hours, that's like a big piece of it, is to kind of concentrate all your efforts on one day.
That makes sense.
And so he's like, we've all only got so many subscribers on our network, whether it's Facebook or email lists or whatever else, and have a day, whatever day that is, that's like your launch day or your, subscription day or whatever. Throw a party, send out an email newsletter, post on Facebook, boost everything else for that 24-hour period. And then that will drive you as far up the charts as you can. And then at the tail end of that 24-hour period, wherever you get on the charts, take a screenshot of it basically to kind of show proof of where you landed. And if you land high enough in the charts, you'll end up getting subscriptions as a result of being in that spot on the chart.
Wow.
And that's how some of the top ones stay in the top, is that they have, like, you see them and they're in the top 10, so you're like, oh, that looks interesting, and you click on it and you hit subscribe. And then even more interesting to all of that, which I think applies to all the platforms, this is some of the best knowledge I actually got the whole time, so thanks, Paul, was that he talked about podcasts and iTunes in the same way that we were talking about Facebook being a 16-year-old girl earlier, right? In that they're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to do what's best for them. And so he's like, so what's the best thing what does Apple want to do? Ultimately, what does Apple want to do? Apple wants to sell product. They want to sell iPhones and they want to sell computers. And they want to create buy-in and they want to create consistency. And so podcasts right now, the number of people listen to podcasts on an iOS device versus an Android device is like, it's like 70-30 or 80-20, something that drastic. It's significantly higher. He basically said ignore everything except for iTunes.
Wow.
And so the subscription model gets people to keep coming back. And then from a brand perspective, for me, if I can get somebody to subscribe to my podcast or this podcast, go subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, by the way. Hit the little subscribe button. And if you can get somebody to subscribe to your podcast, every time you release a new show, you automatically show up on their home screen when they open the podcast app every single time.
That makes sense.
And so you're able to constantly stay in front of everybody, and all you have to do is just keep releasing episodes. So I thought that was a huge takeaway for me. I didn't know any of that going in. I read probably 3 podcast books and listened to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of stuff on the internet. Here's this guy comes like, nope, that's not how it works. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, well. And I started doing a little research, and sure enough, that seems to be true. So Paul's the man if you want some podcast information. Paul Colligan, that's Colligan. You can look him up online. He's got all kind of cool stuff out there. We're definitely worth checking out if you're interested in doing a podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, what else? We're kind of getting to the tail end here, so let's put a bow on this thing. What else happened?
Quick highlights? Anything?
I got a highlight. I think it was the second day we started talking to our Uber drivers.
Oh, yeah. Don't give her up.
Yeah, well, we can't talk about that. But we can
top
talk about
secret.
Oh,
yeah,
actually,
There was some really cool stories.
We had some really good ideas.
Anyways,
Side note.
it was live.
Well, we'll say this. Tell the story about the one guy, the guy who drove us home from the airport, and who he delivered food for.
Yeah, we started talking to him. Nice older Colombian man.
Like Iriad or something?
It was something like, yeah. Older Colombian fella, really broken English. Started talking to him.
Hard time hearing too.
I think so, yeah.
Because
It was
Some of the responses.
I was like, what was going on?
But he had moved from Colombia to LA and lived in LA for 35 years.
He moved also post narco era.
Post, yeah. So he
True.
grew up
So he
doing
grew
that.
up there
Yep.
during that.
And so just started asking him some questions about, living in LA and Turned out he had worked as a delivery, like a grocer delivery person, and I started asking him about if he met anyone famous, and so he delivered groceries to OJ in the house that Nicole was murdered in by someone anonymous.
Not OJ.
Not OJ.
Not OJ.
But I guess he got invited into the house and met OJ and said he was a super cool guy. And so that was pretty interesting to hear. It was pre-murders.
Yeah.
So that's
Back in OJ's glory days.
Yeah, back when the juice was
loose. Yeah.
juice was
And Britney Spears.
And then Britney Spears was his next other one. He had a hard time remembering her name, but
Like that blonde girl.
the singer.
He'll get it on the first try too.
Yeah,
It's like Britney Spears.
Because I was thinking that time period. I was like, it's got to be someone if it was big back then.
But those are just some neat stories.
So then the last day, we needed to get home because Kale had a golf tournament he needed to be at on Friday, so we decided to take the red eye back on the Thursday.
Terrible.
Can't recommend that.
We'll never
Don't
do that
ever
again.
do that.
Unless you're flying first class, then you can do whatever you want.
Oh my god.
We were not flying first class, and so I thought I was getting us an upgrade by putting us in the exit row. That seemed like a good idea because I got long legs and wanted to stretch out a little bit. Turned out our seats did not recline. At all.
Not both trips. Mine didn't recline.
Oh, mine did the first time. Sorry about that.
I got screwed up. Jeez.
No, mine was good on the way out there. I had the whole row on the way out there.
Yeah, I did too.
I had
but
two empty seats in the middle of the
my-
day. So the flight back, we're supposed to leave at 10. Flight's delayed till 10:40.
Mhm.
We didn't land back in Orlando until
5:30.
5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
We did not sleep at all. I wish we had a time-lapse footage of that whole 5 hours. We're like laying on the tray and like, it was horrible.
And then for some reason, the seats in the airplane weren't just like upright. I
No.
felt like they were like leaning
I
over.
said this to Claire, and she made she made fun of me. She's like, "Oh yeah, your seat was leaning forward." She's like, "No, it legitimately felt like it was."
Terrible. And you know how like you go to sleep and like even if you nod off and you literally nod off and you just wake yourself up, that happened to me probably 20 times. I would go to sleep because I'm too tired, and then my head would drop, and then next thing you know, I'm back awake. It was horrendous.
And then we had to drive 2 hours. Chris and I drove 2 hours back from Orlando back home that morning, and I got home. Thankfully, there was nobody there, so I took like a quick 45 minute to an hour power nap, and then got back to it for Friday. But overall, though, really positive trip.
Yeah, it was a great trip.
And really got a lot of ideas, I think, for us internally and for our clients. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Nothing.
No.
Just go ahead and give us a follow here on iTunes. Go ahead and click that subscribe button.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and wait. Again, we'll be dropping this every Monday, apparently.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
as of right now. So.
And so every week what we're going to do is we're going to just have a different primary topic. This week it was the conference that we went to. In the coming weeks it could be anything about marketing. So if you have particular questions about something, leave us a comment on Facebook or on iTunes and a review. And we will do different shows every single week. We'll bring in different team members who want to be a part of the show here at Design Extensions. We've called it the DEtour. We have a DEtour video series as well that's kind of fun, short videos that we're putting out. We've already published 2 of those. We've got 2 more in the works. So those won't be quite as regular because of all the production work that has to go into them. But these podcasts we can definitely put out once a week. At least we're going to give our best effort. So check us out on iTunes, hit subscribe, and leave us a review if you thought it was good. If you didn't, don't leave us a review. Shoot us an email anyway. Let us know how we can improve and make it better, or shoot us a Facebook message. We'd love to connect. Hope this has been helpful.
And if you're ever curious about what exactly we do here at Design Extensions, head to designextensions.com. You can see pictures of all of us. You can find out exactly what we do and learn more about us.
Cool. Thanks, Kel.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris.
See ya.
All right, guys. See ya.